Hi, good day, and welcome to Studio Central's daily art demonstration. My name is James, and I'll be taking you through a couple of watercolor techniques. I work with Artbeat Studio. We are a not-for-profit registered charity, and we really encourage and support the healing power of art and how the creative process can really it's a big part of mental health recovery. Art itself is a big part of mental wellness. It's a way to sort of bring you to whatever medium you choose, whether it's painting, whether it's singing, whether it's cooking, and it's a kind of mindfulness that really is grounding and is a beautiful form of self-expression. So Artbeat Studios has always strived to support that and really believes in the art community. And here we are with you today. Studio Central, our urban art center, normally open to the public, but due to COVID, restrictions in place, we've been closed. So normally we would do in-person workshops, we have a coffee shop, we have live music. That's all been transitioned into this online format. We will be opening soon. We'll be releasing some more details about that, so that's exciting. So it'll be nice to see everyone's face again. But in the meantime, this online format has been a great way for us to keep reaching the community and to keep bringing you these creative techniques that hopefully you can follow along with, or you can just sit back and watch and know that you are a part of this art community. And we're so thankful. We're so thankful for all of you for being a part of that. So as I said before, I'm doing a couple of watercolor techniques. Something I think should be fairly easy. I've never actually done this before, but basically I'm going to be taking this is my watercolor paper. I'm going to wet the paper, and then first step, I'm creating a background. So I'm going to wet the paper, and then I'm going to take watercolor paint and then touch the brush to the paper and hopefully create a cool effect. And so to create a background. And then the second step, I'm going to be taking this, you see that? A little bit, I think it was a fern. But I'm actually going to paint this and get watercolor paint all over this. I'm gonna try to create a stamping effect. So it's sort of a neat little thing I saw. I've seen it done before, and then I was actually reading about it, and it seems like a pretty straightforward process with sort of a really neat end result. So I thought I would give that a go. So I'm gonna get right into it. So yeah, watercolor paper, watercolor paint, and I also have these tubes of watercolor paint as well, which I'm going to be using. I'm probably going to use the green one, and I have an iced drink with me as well. It's been very hot lately, so I hope everyone has been staying safe and well and hydrated, because it is hot. So I'm going to adjust this camera so you can see what I'm doing down here, okay? So give me one moment. Okay, so step one, this closer. Adjust this again. Okay, right on. That's pretty good. Okay, so this is a bigger brush. I'm gonna wet it and then just cover my paper So I'm wetting the brush and then I'm just covering the paper in the water. So I believe this has been called a wet on wet technique. Again, I'm not a professional artist by any means, but I've always used art and painting as just a form of creative expression for myself. So I know there's probably some of you out there who are more familiar with the technical terms, but I think what I'm doing right now is like a wet on wet technique, is what I've heard. So I'm gonna basically soak, this is a wet brush, and I'm gonna really soak my brush. I'm gonna use orange, I'm gonna start with orange. Just soak my brush in that, and then I'm gonna touch the tip to the paper to see what kind of effect you can create. So I've got some really, brush is just wet and full of color, and then I'll start at the top. So you can see as I'm doing this, the color just sort of spreads out. You can just really see the color starts to sort of spread itself across. It's really such a cool effect. So I'm going to be using this orange. I'm going to use a couple of other colors to create this background, and I'm gonna try, you can move it around as well. So if you move the paper, you can actually control the direction of where the paint is going. So I'm gonna actually use a little bit of yellow. So I'm just gonna soak this brush again full of color, and then so now I'm just sort of dabbing. I also have some paper here. I'm just going to pull up some of the moisture here. And the idea is with this technique, I just want to play with, I'm just playing with the canvas. I just want to play with the color, just watch it sort of spread out on the paper. I'm going to use a little bit of red now. And it's very runny, so it's really cool. You can get this sort of effect. I'm tilting the paper now and the paint is running down the paper. You can kind of see that effect happening. Nice, I like that. So again, this is a technique I actually haven't done before, but you know, it's just a neat way to watch the colors spread. I'm really liking how this is working by tilting the paper up. I'm trying to use sort of some natural colors here. The leaf, I'm going to be working with this leaf in just after this, but I'm going to be using green for that. So I'm trying to use colors that are sort of complementary to green. Ooh, I like that. So I think I need more yellow. So now I'm just really sort of letting myself play with this color in the canvas. So the really nice thing about like an art technique is it's practice, right? Like I'm practicing, I'm playing with color, I'm seeing what I can create, and I'm putting this watercolor paint onto the wet paper, so to create that sort of wet on wet technique. Again, you want to use a lot. You just want your brush to be just soaked. So when it hits the canvas, it starts to spread out. So I'm gonna put this. My paper is starting to dry up a bit, so I might I want to get a little bit wetter. So again, just playing with the colors. I'm using oranges, yellows, a little bit of red. So far the picture is looking, it's getting like sort of a very organic kind of vibe. Again. So my paper's already started to dry a bit, so I'm just gonna sort of use the brush and pull this liquid down to fill in some of these gaps. Okay. I want more yellow in the center part. So because of the wet on wet technique, you get this kind of effect. So the paper was wet, and then putting wet color onto the wet paper, you can see there's like this sort of spreading effect. But I do want to just use the brush now to fill in. So some of these parts have already dried up a bit, so I'm sort of losing that wet on wet effect. But what I'm doing is I'm just coming to the paper with a lot of water just to sort of keep that color spreading around. Nice. So even with this, like I have the wet yellow here, I took a little bit of red, and you can just see where I'm touching, you'll see the color spread out. So you can see it spreading. Yeah, very cool. So while I'm gonna give this a minute just to dry, as I said before, the second step, so this is really sort of, it's a very simple technique. So that was wetting the paper, putting that wet color onto the wet paper to create these sort of these spider webs of color on the canvas. And now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna paint green on this side, and I want to create a type of like almost like a stamp, I guess. And I'm gonna put that sort of over top of this background. So we'll see what kind of effect we can achieve. So while this dries, I'm just gonna move this off to the side carefully. And I'm gonna move my palette over. So that's drying. It's also good sometimes when you paint, you can use a hair dryer that helps to dry watercolor paint quicker. But I want to grab another brush. So for this, I'm actually going to use the two paints. We have this nice green here. The paint on this palette's very dry, but we'll see. I don't think it'll pick up any of the colors, but we just wanted. So again, I've never actually done this before, so this is sort of fun. I'm just made it a little damp, not using too much water. I'm putting a lot of sort of high pigment onto here. So there's a lot of watercolor going on to this, as you can see. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can kind of see how this is a lighter green and it's already kind of darker. Okay. So again, just using a lot of watercolor paint on this to cover the leaves. I want to say branches, but they're not. It's not really a branch. Cool. So you like work on a palette or like newspaper or lay something down, because this obviously I'm getting a lot around it. So I'm going to use a bit more green. Okay. Turn this around. My hands, getting lots of color on my fingers. Don't be afraid to get paint on your hands. Sort of getting right in there is all part of the fun of art and that creativity. Okay. Okay, cool. So I think I have enough on here. It feels pretty soaked. I just want to make sure that this is dry. I'm just sort of dabbing this. There's one sort of part that's maybe a little got too much water on it, so I'm just dabbing some of the water off of this. But it feels pretty good. So, let's see what I can do. I'm gonna adjust this. Give me a moment. So I'm gonna put my palette at the top. And put this back here. So this was fairly wet. So what I did was, there was like almost like a pool of water on the paper. So I just took a piece of like paper towel and dabbed it just to pull some of that moisture off. Now I want to take this leaf that has been covered in the watercolor paint, and I think I'm going to start here, and I'm also going to use a piece of paper towel to press it onto the paper. So just give me 1 second. Try doing this. And using the paper towel, just sort of, because my fingers are so covered in paint, I thought that this could be a good way to, you know, stop that. So I'm gonna pull it up. Cool, all right, right on. So it's working. And I'm gonna put a bit more green on. And I'm gonna do this a few more times onto my paper. So this is just sort of a fun way to use leaves. If you have anything outside, you can use as to paint. So anything like this is a fern leaf, I think, like a maple leaf, whatever kind of tree or bush you have outside, and sort of a fun technique. Oops. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to press this down. Cool. So I'm actually sort of putting the color is starting to degrade because like it's really heavy here because that was the first one. And the second one's a little bit lighter, and the third one is probably going to be a little bit lighter. So I kind of like that effect. So I just want to get this, brush that color back onto here. Oh. Again, this paper towel really helps, just because my fingers are so covered in paint. So as you're watching this, you can even think like it doesn't have to be a leaf, right? Like it could be anything if you, to create a stamp like this, to create this type of effect. Even like the bottom of a shoe, that would actually work too. That would be cool. Oh, very nice. So we're gonna do one more, I think. So even as I'm doing this, I'm thinking like, oh, what else? Like I mentioned the shoe, like what else can I do to actually, you know, to create this type of effect? So this is pretty cool because you can do this effect with anything. So this is pretty wet. And again, I'm just gonna lay this, figure out. Press this down. Okay. Oh, nice. I think I'm going to do one more. Yeah, let's do one more. Even though this is like technically it's an exercise and a technique, I do like the idea of sort of trying to create a sense of a finished piece. So we'll see what I can do with this. Nice. I like how it starts to like sort of degrade and like fade a bit. It's like the image sort of starts to get lighter and lighter. Nice. One more. Again, the image is just getting nice and light. I like that. So I'm using this leaf as a kind of a stamping effect. And again, I'm just sort of imprinting these leaves kind of where I think to fill in some of these gaps. Just always fun to play. It's fun to play with the paint. It's fun to play with the color. And my hands are completely covered in paint right now, so, okay. So I'm gonna let this dry for just a moment and then I'll show you kind of what I came up with. So just to review what I did, the first part was a wet on wet technique, which I think is the right name, I hope. But basically covering my watercolor paper in water, like a thin coat of brushed on water, and then using different colors I touch the brush to the paper, and that wet on wet technique creates that effect where the color spreads out over the paper. So it's a really sort of cool effect, very specific to watercolor. It's a very expressive. And so I created the background, and then what I did was I took a leaf and then I painted that leaf with the watercolor, and I used it as a stamp to leave a print of the leaf on the paper. So I wanted to create the background, and then put that print of the leaf on top of it, just to sort of, you know, do something a little different. It's a different kind of creative technique. So I'll show you what I got. And I'm loving it. Okay, this is really cool. So that is what I came up with. So this is literally the print of the leaf on top of that background. And then I ended up just sort of dabbing that like stamp all over to sort of fill in the space. And it's got like a really very natural, kind of wispy, like I like the idea of the solid print and then sort of fades into this ghost image of the leaf. So that is my creative technique. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone has a good rest of your week. I know tomorrow's Friday, but it's gonna continue being hot, so I definitely stay hydrated. I know that's like, you wanna stay healthy, you wanna stay safe, and you wanna stay well. So make art, drink lots of water, and thank you. We'll be back, or we'll be here tomorrow again. We're doing an art demo around the same time, so tune in then. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.